Welcome to the Bold Analysis. During the recent President William Ruto's visit to United States of America, there were so many takeaways from that trip. And immediately the president arrived in the country, he decided to weigh in the trivial matter about the cost of the jet he used to the US. The country has been talking about how much was spent and why the president did not use the national carrier. But one of the most important aspects that everyone in this country and in this channel have been asking is Kenya was to be designated as non-NATO ally. For the first time, as NATO means North Atlantic Treaty Organization, these are countries in the North Atlantic side that are close allies with the US. And so the country has been asking question, what does Kenya stand to benefit? What is the interpretation of this? And that is why I have decided to deviate from that conversation about the jet, because even the president came back and instead of trying to speak about some of these issues, he decided to put the country in the debate about the cost of jet. The understanding, and that is something that has been confirmed beyond any reasonable doubt, that the Kenya Airways flight to Washington would have been less cheaper compared to the hire jet from Dubai. And I think that discussion should rest. And so, I want us to understand Kenya designation as non-NATO ally. Where are the risks and what does this mean? Kindly subscribe to our channel. And also I want to say thank you for supporting the project we were doing to support the women that were stranded after their houses were demolished in Mukuru, Kwaroben. Watch this video to the end, because I'm going to share that here. NATO is a military, non-NATO ally, means a military cooperation with the US armed forces. And this means that if Kenya is to be attacked by any of its neighbors or any enemy, then US will come in the aid of the country. And that is why analysts are asking, is Kenya under any imminent attack? The answer might be yes or no, but more prominently, no. The second interpretation of this is when America is having a mission in the region, Kenya is likely to be roped in this mission. And I understand very well. For example, if you look at this story that have just been done today, immediately Ruto arrived from the US. Kenya has been asked to join the war against Houthi insurgents in Yemen and the small Somali pirates in the Indian Ocean. It is believed that this is largely part of what is bringing this. Some of the major non-NATO allies are facing peripheral conflicts degenerating into a war. And for example, currently China is surrounding Taiwan and Taiwan is under threat. There have also been Pakistan, Ukraine also was attacked by Russia, and Israel, Hamas, and Tunisia also in Africa. So does it mean that this designation attracts some enemies? But it is critically important to be balanced in reasoning and also accept that there are benefits of being a non-NATO ally. For example, we understand that US wants to set up their military base in Kenya, in Wajir and Manda Bay, and it is part of a strategy to accommodate their soldiers that have been actually ejected from the West Africa. So with a military base set up, probably it's going to help in strengthening our intelligence, and it's also going to bring strategic security, because when they also have their bases here, we are also strategically secured. Amongst the other things include getting military support, because part of this deal includes an exchange program where our military forces are also going to be trained into US military academy. So there are some exchange programs that comes with it, and also including inflow of military gadgets or other equipment. But much for us to understand better, I listened to American opinion shaper Jackson Hinkle, And he tries to break down why there are lessons we should learn for the relationship between the US and Israel. I picked Israel for very strategic reason, and in this, we're going to listen to what they are saying and whether really the relationship between US and Kenya, even on the military front, is something that is going to benefit the country. And I want to promise you this is a bit mind-blowing and really give a good perspective. So on this part, I have a disclaimer. I would also want to listen to your version of it because it weighs on the US support in Israel. And there is something that Jackson Hinkle is saying. Israel is a non-NATO ally to the US. And US has been supporting, but it has been supporting them over the fight against the Hamas. But one of the critical points here is over-reliance on the US. Is it really true that US is the super partner to the country? He's saying one of the biggest challenge is neglecting the sovereign. America has a challenge, or rather has a culture of neglecting the sovereign. And what he's saying here is that despite of the resources that are being used to fund and support Israel in fight against the Hamas, it is not true that America is such much endowed, or rather America is sitting pretty well. And he gives examples of how things, even in America, are not working well. I want you to listen to this soundbite. And so that is his point.
Our relationship with Israel means that we are, by default, neglecting the homeland. Let's take a look at America today. Each year, 74,000 overdose deaths, 600,000 cancer-related deaths, 702,000 heart disease deaths. 80 million people lack basic health insurance right now here today. 100 million Americans have medical debt. We have 500,000 homeless Americans, and they're sending bombs to Israel, Patriot battery systems to Ukraine. 60,000 of those homeless are veterans. It's insane. 20% of Americans are facing mental health issues, and 65% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. I don't know about you guys, but that is about as clear of an indication as I could ever think of to show that we are an empire in decline and we are living in a failed state. For all the finger pointing that we get from global leaders in the West saying, Russia's a failed state, China's a failed state, Iran is a failed state, they say all this crazy stuff. It's like, well, hold up. I've been to Russia. I've been to China. Their major cities are much nicer, much cleaner, much safer, have no homeless. They have better infrastructure. And I'm not saying I want to move to Russia or China. I'm an American. But the fact of the matter is, we got a lot to learn from these countries, and we shouldn't just be saying, that making up lies and saying that they're failed states, because that's simply not true. And let's talk about their economies, okay? Because Russia and China are not waging imperialist for-profit wars. They're not. It's just a fact. Let's look at Russia and China. Despite sanctions, Russia is now the G20's fifth fastest growing economy. Russia is the largest economy in Europe. The UK, however, and Germany, they're in a recession. Russia's economy has just reached a 10-year high. This is coming after 2 years when Joe Biden said, we're going to sanction Russia into oblivion. They're going to be on their hands and knees begging for us to drop those sanctions. It's like, no, Russia's better and stronger than ever before, and their leader has a very high approval rating. On the left, you see me in Shanghai. I know it looks like I photoshopped myself in front of a Blade Runner or something, or like some crazy futuristic movie, but that's actually a real city in China, and there's many cities in China that look like this. In fact, I don't even think Shanghai is the most beautiful. But as for China, they also are destroying us economically. China's economy will grow by 5.3% this year. The American economy will grow by 1%. China's hunger rate is 2.5%, just like the United States is. But China's hunger rate decreased 7% since 2001. The United States' was stagnant. In 2022, China surpassed the US in GDP purchasing power parity by $5 trillion. Could you imagine? Everyone talks and everyone thinks that the United States is the world's largest economy. What do we produce? Uber Eats? Lyft rides? Like, we don't actually build anything here. We have rapacious, for-profit systems of middlemen. We have rent. We have, a class of people who benefit from the, debt structure in this country. It is a Byzantine labyrinth of nothing but, as Matthew McConaughey said in The Wolf of Wall Street, fugazi, fugazi. One last point here. Chinese salaries have increased 2 times over the last decade. U.S. salaries were, of course, stagnant. So all of this is to simply say that why are we neglecting our homeland? Why aren't we advancing at the same rate, at least, of Russia and China? We call these countries gas stations with nuclear bombs, but their gas stations seem to be doing very good business. The truth is that true power comes to those who put death before dishonor.
And I tried to draw some parallels with Kenya. William Ruto seems to be walking through that path because currently we are sending 1,000 police officers to Haiti for Haiti mission. And the country is asking this: why are we neglecting our own sovereign? Because even back in Kenya, we are struggling to neutralize the bandits that are already causing havoc in the country. So just like America is also pumping resources in Israel so that Israel can be able to neutralize the Hamas in Gaza, now they are neglecting their sovereign, and that's what Jackson Hinkle is saying. Now Kenya seems to have also been roped in that line of thought, and we have neglected our sovereign here because we also have strategic security challenges here, but we are deploying 1,000 officers to Haiti. And that is the question that citizen journalist Ayub Abdikadir was asking the president during that visit.
Ruto, you said that Kenya is committed, and in your Carter speech in Atlanta you said it's based on humanitarianism, helping Haiti out. But can you explain the geopolitical goal, 12,000 kilometers away from Nairobi, when schools in the counties of Baringo, West Pokot, and Turkana have not yet opened because of the banditry problem, yet you are committing our national police force to Haiti, and where is the priority, this being one of your major manifesto pillars, talking about security, and to the extent that even the Defense Cabinet Secretary talked about the deployment of, if need be, the Kenyan military or the special personnel to make sure that schools are open, children go to school in areas that are bandit-prone in Kenya. Why are you committing to Haiti when we have a problem back home?
And that is one of the greatest undoing, because when America tries to put you in that and tells you, you have to do it their style, you will understand the reason why, the president cannot explain why he's sending police to Haiti while back here in the country we're having challenges. Now that is the same reasoning that Hinkle is saying, that Biden is pumping resources and weapons and everything to Israel so that they can neutralize Hamas, while back even in US, it doesn't mean that things are really well. The other second danger of much of this US relationship comes with a lie on protecting human rights. America, before they give any aid, before any support is given, there's some boxes that you need to tick, and it is really in paper that you need to tick boxes on democracy and human rights. But something is happening here, and I want you to get it, that in Israel, Israel are being blamed of violation of human rights in Hamas. Even though on that war, I strongly believe there is no better angel. There is no angel between Hamas and Israel. Both of them have also witnessed violation of human rights, because even the Hamas guys, there was a graphic photo that was actually shared the other day that they had actually arrested some women soldiers from Israel, Israeli women soldiers. So that is something that is actually there. And so what happened is ICC issued some warrant of arrest against Netanyahu. And after that was done, do you know that US, or rather Biden, is now standing against ICC and is saying that ICC is not right to prosecute Netanyahu. The grounds of ICC to prosecute Netanyahu is on violation of human rights, which include the use of hunger as a tool of war. Remember what has been happening. The strategy that Israel has been using in Gaza has been, it made us that scorched-earth policy, where instead of maybe separating the insurgents, of course, Hamas are now the Hamas insurgents. I don't know that I'm using the right word as insurgents, because in some school of thought they are fighters. So let me just call the Hamas in hospitals and schools. So what has been happening is that Israel has been killing many civilians, and startling data on civilians that have been killed is actually worrying. But an attempt by ICC to try to prosecute Netanyahu is getting a backlash. And currently, the Congress Speaker, Mike Johnson, has given okay for Netanyahu to address the joint Congress there. Even though even the Ukraine President Zelensky also was given the nod to address the Congress at the time the Russia attacked. So what are we saying? Looking at that example, the opinion shapers are saying it is not true that America is a crusader of protecting human rights.
Israeli media spike in incidents of Jewish people in Israel spitting on Christian worshipers in Jerusalem. As a Christian, that doesn't sound like any country I want to visit, although I don't think that Mossad would let me, even if I wanted to. If you go to Israel today, you'll witness the IDF firing off bombs at some of the oldest Orthodox Christian churches, not just in Gaza, but in the world. That Christian church that they bombed several months ago, that was the third oldest Christian church in the world. I saw a new stat this week, very shocking. Israel, since October 7th, has murdered 3% of the entire Christian population of Gaza. It's shame indeed, shame indeed. Not to mention our blind loyalty for our great ally of Ukraine, right? The great democracy of Ukraine, which at this very moment is imprisoning Russian Orthodox clerics, Christian leaders all throughout the country. They are bombing Russian Orthodox churches in the Donbass, and they do not seem intent on stopping. No one in the U.S. Embassy in Kiev seems hell-bent on stopping what they're doing to Christians inside of Ukraine. So the question again, just why is it that we, America, a country that was founded, at least to some extent, on these sorts of ideals, and the ideals that everyone is allowed to worship freely, free of persecution, we're supporting countries that are spitting on Christians, bombing Christians, doing all this crazy stuff, not to mention what we're doing to all other religious groups around the world. But specifically, I think for those sorts of Fox News viewers who might still be supporting Israel, this argument might land home with a lot of them. I guess we'll have to wait and see. So yes, this is just another really base photo. I thought I thought it'd be good to put these photos next to each other. You know, oh, the terrorists throwing little pebbles at the IDF, $4 million Merkava tanks. How could they? All right.
Do you know that in this country, just Kenya here, we've had some of these challenges? When people went to the streets complaining about the cost of living and the opposition was on the streets with the people, quite a number of us were killed. Quite a number of Kenyans were killed. But they've never been called out. It never came out to call out those violations. And that's one of the challenges why he's saying it's not true that America is a super ally. Now, there is this discussion about isolation and on the global stage.
All right, now the third point, isolation on the global stage. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of BRICS. Oh, my people, I love it. I saw even our CNN journalist raise his hand. That's great. A little shocked, but that's great. I'll stop picking on you. I'll stop. We're now living in the era of multipolarity, and it just puts a smile on my face. I love it because What this means is that the unipolar order of the United States controlling everything across the world is it's in its last steps. You know, there's not much left to it. The days of the United States telling any country around the world how they are to act, what religions they're allowed to follow, what they're allowed to do with their military, if they're allowed to have a military, what they're allowed to do economically, who they're allowed to trade with, what currencies they're allowed to use. This is all how the system of unipolarity has been able to maintain itself for years and years and years. But right now we're witnessing something really incredible happen. Russia and China at the helm of this economic unit called BRICS is challenging the United States and the West, not just economically, but also militarily and culturally. The foundation of BRICS, of course, is made up of Russia and China, as well as India, Brazil, South Africa, Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, and Ethiopia. Argentina was also brought in, but their Zionist dipshit, sorry for my French, leader, Javier Milei, the guy that's, he got elected and then he left Argentina and went to go kiss the wall with Benjamin Netanyahu. He pulled out of BRICS. I wonder why. Now, this October, there's going to be some new BRICS members that are brought into the fold. Bolivia, Syria, Zimbabwe, Cuba, and Cameroon are all expected to join the BRICS grouping. The more that we support Israel, the more that the multipolar world is going to take shape in a very quick manner. And it's still shocking to me that those in D.C. have not figured this out yet. But the more money we send to Ukraine, Ukrainian Nazis, by the way, the more bombs we send to Israel, the more javelins we send to Taiwan, Taiwanese separatist terrorists, the more that the multipolar world is going to take shape quicker and quicker. Okay? Now, what does unipolarity mean for Gaza? What it means is it's the force that bans any nation from doing trade or having relations with terrorist groups, okay? Those pesky terrorist groups that are fighting for their freedom. It criminalizes opposition to the state of Israel. It maintains the sanction-induced famine on Gaza, vetoes a ceasefire in Gaza at the United Nations, vetoes Palestinian statehood at the United Nations, threatens to sanction the ICC for issuing arrest warrants against Netanyahu, bribes countries from filing genocide lawsuits at the International Court of Justice, and prevents any nation from standing up for themselves economically, culturally, or militarily. BRICS already has 6 of the top 10 oil-producing countries in the world and 3 of the top 5. Now, that's a big problem for the United States, who bases all of our power on the power of the petrodollar. When you begin to have all these countries like Saudi Arabia going rogue and joining BRICS with Putin and dabbing him up when they meet in Moscow, you're going to have some problems. BRICS has already called on Middle Eastern countries to stop using the US dollar for oil trade settlements. BRICS members account for 52% of all global oil production. BRICS is also winning over historic allies of the United States, as I mentioned, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, who all have long-standing deep ties with the United States. So each of these BRICS members, they're focusing on their development. They're getting non-predatory loans from the BRICS New Development Bank. They're allowed to conduct relations with whoever they want, and they're allowed to support groups like Hamas.
And I'm still using the Israel-US relationship. What is the global stage BRICS is talking the context of BRICS. US is not fighting Israel, but US is supporting Israel in the fight against Hamas. And as we speak, now all the enemies of Israel are also against US. The context here is about the BRICS. The BRICS is coming over and it's creating strategic enemies for US. Now, Kenya having taken that position, that means there was even a decision for Kenya to join BRICS and join the de-dollarization campaign that they actually dropped. Kenya was supposed to join with Argentina, but immediately Argentinian president was elected, he flew to Israel and kissed that wall, and after that he changed his mind. So what they are saying here is, US have some strategic enemies. Like now they're creating enmity between them and other countries like now China, the Russia and the others. But in the East, BRICS is emerging. And one of the threats of BRICS is they have taken the 52% of the oil producing countries. The Saudi Arabia, which is a giant oil producer, and that was a traditional US ally. The United Arab Emirates, which is also a strategic producer of oil and was a strong US ally. They're taking those US allies and they're making a big economic bloc with also incentives like debts, like loans they can also give. But now Kenya is taking a strategic exit, or rather is taking a strategic exclusion by aligning directly to US. Now, if the oil producing companies under BRICS say we are not going to supply through dollar, what will happen? And that is why they are saying there can be isolation in the global stage. That's a danger that Kenya is also having. It can isolate itself if it solely aligns with the US. And that is a bit of it. Remember, Zimbabwe is part of this. BRICS now is bringing Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Ethiopia in East Africa here. I don't know that Ethiopia is not a member of East Africa, but we have Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, Bolivia and Zimbabwe are joining. Both of them are lithium producing countries. What's happening? That countries isolating against the US, Kenya is also going to be isolated against those countries while we have our oil from those BRICS nations. So that is what the discussion about isolation is key. And lastly, do you know that America makes allies and destroys them? Notre Dame, Ibrahim Traore, the Burkinabe president, Captain Ibrahim Traore, when he was speaking about this, he alluded and he gave this example and he said that, US made Gaddafi. And Libya, people who follow that say Gaddafi was one of the best presidents by them. And US made Gaddafi, but the tail end of Obama's reign, they brought Gaddafi down. But at the time Gaddafi was coming to power, it was a strong US ally. So what has happened? By that time, the oil from Libya used to work for the locals because the multinationals were actually from Libya. But after the exit, after the fall of Gaddafi, now the oil in Libya is going down because other foreign countries are now getting intrusion in Libya. They're extracting that oil, and now it's a resource that is now being used and extracted by foreign countries, and that is not helping Libya, despite Libya being one of the largest producers of oil in the continent. So that is why they're saying that Kenya must also tread careful. There is no guarantee that the friendship is permanent. Sometime later, and that will be in June, I will look at what happens if Trump takes power from Biden. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my take. I decided to wade in this because this is a topic that I think had been left behind, and not even mainstream media and Kenyans have been seeking interpretation on what exactly this means. What are the dangers and the risks? I think we had not looked into it, and that's why I decided to use the current relationship between the US and Israel, and through what Jackson Hinkle was actually talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and let's meet in the next. Hello guys, so as I promised you guys that we will be supporting these families. I'm already at Mikuru Kwayaba, that's what I'm saying the name. And this is the nearest primary school around this place because we do not go for field, and because of promotion, when we go there then maybe things will turn very chaotic. So these are the families. Maybe 9 they're waiting for Mzegu's and yeah, so thank you. This is the families we want to support, and I also want to urge this that it doesn't end here. The need is still big. There are also still infants, and you can still get to me. I will still be able to link you up with 1 or 2 families But even if you have to support more, nimeambiwa wengine bado wamebaki wengi sana. Yeah, but we did it also to do our part as the board, and I just want to thank you for having done this.
Asante sana.
Asante sana, mbarikiwe.
Okay.
Wengine watatu hata mpige tu. Pige tu. Zaingia.
Mama tu hapo. Mama hapo.
Okay, habari zenu tena. Jinsi nilisema, mimi naitwa Kipelege, mkaaji wa Landimawe, Kayaba, Mukuru. Kwanza ninachukua hii fursa kusema asante sana kwa wenye wamekuja kutusaidia. Kwa hivi sasa nyumba tulishapata, ni ile hela ya kulipa hiyo nyumba ndio hatukuwa nayo. Lakini kwa uwezo wa Mwenyezi Mungu, Mungu ametenda. Pesa ndio hizi tumepata na tunaenda kulipa hizo nyumba zetu. Hatutalala tena kwa baridi. Naye muendelee na kusaidia watu wengine, isiwe ni sisi peke yetu, sababu watu wameathirika pale wengi bado wanalala kwa hiyo kiwanja mahali tulikuwa tunalala. Tunashukuru sana, Mungu awabariki.
Before tuende kwa wengine, I want to add one here. There are people, and guys, there are people that normally they are not sensing in the picture. Anne is one person that has been coordinating this. She's behind this, and I just want us to to one word and thank you very much. Asante sana for having been behind this, for working in the community. You are a warrior, and I know that you are amongst people that normally are not celebrated, but we thank God that everything. But we also need to celebrate Anne, because Anne is also another person behind the.
Thank you. I am Anne Kanini, a community representative in Mukuru Nyayo location. Kazi yangu ni kusaidia watu wale ambao wanapata shida tofauti, hasa katika huu mkasa wa floods. Katika ile hali I was able to identify watu ambao wamekosa makazi, na ninashukuru the board team for coming through kuweza kusaidia hizi jamaa. Ukiangalia hapa George ni mzee ambaye ni mzee sana, na kuna hapa Dani ni mzee sana. Wakikaa nje kwangu ilikuwa inaumiza moyo, kwa sababu nyumba yangu pia ni ndogo, haiwezi watosha. And for the people who have come through to support these people, may God bless you for doing something which is good, ambayo itazuia wasipate magonjwa. Kukaa kwa baridi kunaleta magonjwa, na hata ile insecurity, they can be harmed. Kwa hivyo God bless you and continue doing the good work. Personally, mimi nimejitolea kuwasaidia watu katika hili eneo la Mukuru Watanyayo. Asanteni kwa kutushika mkono.
And I want us to pray, but before we pray, I just want to put a point to you. Guys, this need is still there, and I was just talking with Anne behind the scene. She was telling me that quite a number that are still there. So even in your own individual capacity, I closed the fundraiser yesterday, and I finished this program here, but it's not ending because the solution is not coming to an end. There are still other people.
Kasema asante, kasema asante, kasema asante, ewe Mungu wangu. Baba, katika jina la Yesu Kristo tunasema ni asante kwa sababu ya wema wako na fadhili zako ambazo hudumu milele na milele. Hakika Bwana, katika hili janga umetuletea watu ambao ni roho safi, ambao wamesaidia Baba hawa watu wetu ambao kuanzia hii dakika wanaenda kulipa nyumba na kupata hata kupumzika katika nyumba zao. Uinuliwe na uimidiwe. Kwa wale wote waliochanga, Bwana wa majeshi, tutamka neno la baraka ukawabariki maradufu katika jina la Yesu Kristo mwana wa Mungu. Ni kwa ajili ya Kelvin, ni kwa ajili ya Brian na timu yao yote Baba, ukapate na kuwabariki. Asante Baba, ni kwa ajili ya hii timu wanapotoka hapa na kuanza maisha mapya katika maeneo mapya. Mungu utaweza kuwalinda na kuwaongoza. Asante ni kwa ajili yangu Baba, ninapoenda kufanya hii kazi nzuri katika hii community, neema yako ikanitoshe. Tunakushukuru kwa ajili ya mwalimu Simon, amekuwa ni baraka kwa wenyeji wa mtaa Bwana wa majeshi, naye ukambariki katika kiwango kingine, ukafungua milango ya baraka kwa ajili yake. Tunapoachana ukatulinde, inuliwa mfalme, na ni katika jina la Yesu tunaomba na kuamini. Amen.